with that Asensio breakaway, by the way, I mean that was the best thing that happened in the game from a Real Madrid perspective. The cruise pass was incredible. It was nice to see Asensio latch on the way he did with confidence and finish it with confidence. It reminded me, I saw this on Twitter, it reminded me of Rui Costa's pass to Shevchenko against us in 2003, which was, to this day, remains one of the best assists I've ever seen. And Kroos's was arguably more difficult because he did it with the outside of his foot and he had to kind of curl it around. It wasn't a straight line. But when I watched that goal, in a way I had to think, I was like, we don't really get to see this often where Real Madrid are on a break in transition. It's very rare, right? Because teams don't allow us that kind of space usually, let alone with a shorthanded in a shorthanded game. And so I was surprised to see it. At the same time, I was surprised and disappointed we didn't exploit it more on, because we kind of had it there for the taking. And I suspect that's why Zidane opted to go for Sergio Arribas instead of Isco in this game, because you had the quarterbacks in Kroos and Modric from deep doing things, but you didn't. Maybe he wanted to just go like for like and get somebody speedy on the wings to latch onto those. But again, we just didn't. It never really appeared for us again. I mean, Asensio had a great chance from a Kroos pass in the box later that he didn't capitalize, which I think was another. There were a couple important moments in this game what Real Madrid didn't capitalize on. But the other thing, Matt, I'm curious to know what like your solution to this might have been, because I thought one of the side effects of losing Militao early was that they really had no idea how to cope with that, and it was just kind of on the fly. Let's just put people there, and the first like couple minutes after the red card, all of Kroos, Casemiro, Modric were dropping deep in that center back position to cover. Then it was very clear that it's basically going to be Casemiro's playing that role on defense in the way, and then Kroos drops back on offense. And then what I think started to happen was that the whole team would just go narrow to compensate. And anytime Levante had the ball, like Mendy was basically a center back, and the ball will get switched and no one can actually get to the switch in time. Like Hazard wouldn't block those crosses either when a ball goes there. And so Miramon had all this chance. Miramon and Clerc both basically could just stay in the final third. And Miramon would put these crosses in that were dangerous. And basically right on cue to that, after I kind of took that note, Miramon puts the cross in, which Morales scores from. But did you feel like Real Madrid coped? Like do you think they could have coped better or differently to the red card?
Just real quick before, like Miramon's positioning in this game was like incredible. Like if you look at the heat map, he's more advanced than Malero, and he just looks like a right winger this entire game. Anyway, I just wanted to say that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first half, our setup was actually probably better than it was in the second half. We more often than not would just drop into it. If we decided to abandon the press, we would just drop into a 4-4-1 shape and just sit low and try to counterattack. And that's where our best chances came from. I mean, the Kroos pass and the Asensio goal that you guys mentioned, that's a counterattack. The Hazard play early on to Benzema, where he does that reverse pass, that was a counterattack. And then besides counterattack, set pieces were our other option. A sense that ball you talked about where Casemiro lofted it over the back line to Asensio, and then Casemiro got on the end of a Kroos pass free kick right at the end of the first half. And so those were our best chances of the game, and I think that's where we could have continued to capitalize. If we're going to play with 10 men, you might as well make the most of counterattacks and set pieces. But in the second half, we just completely abandoned that. And you put it out on Twitter, and I completely agree with it, was we saw Modric and Kroos doing their usual thing where they go out to kind of be like the false right back, false left back, and build up play from those deeper positions on the wings. But then we had absolutely no one in the midfield. And so if we lost possession, Levante could just counter and go right down our throat, right down the middle. And so I think that's where it got a little bit more chaotic in the second half. And I did not like the plan in the second half. And I don't think we really created anything in the second half.
There wasn't much. There really wasn't much, which I think, and when I was looking at that XG chart, so it's skewed a little bit because it has, the one I understand anyway, has Real Madrid 1.24, Levante at 1.83. Levante obviously have the penalty included in that, which they missed. there's one that didn't show up on the XG chart, and I guess it didn't count as a shot. In my mind, it did, but I guess it didn't. When Cruz releases Asensio in the box the second time, when it's already 1-0, Asensio tries to score with his right foot. That was a golden chance. I don't know what he was doing there. I guess he just fumbled it, and that didn't count as a shot. I think that was a huge moment that he needs to, like, he's going to rue that. As great as he took the first goal, he needed to do better in that situation. The other, Benzema needed to do better on a couple chances too. He had that one in the 6-yard box where he just basically shoots it at the corner flag. It was neither a shot nor a cross nor a cutback, nothing. And then he had another one in the second half that was a little bit further up, but still close to the 6-yard box. I just feel like Real Madrid just made bad errors in this game. Not least the goal conceded, the equalizer. I'm kind of surprised. So I don't know if you guys have brought this up or not. I haven't seen you guys brought it up, but maybe I didn't look at all of your tweets. And I haven't seen anyone bring this up yet. I'm surprised Asensio went unscathed on that defensive sequence. Because to me, I know Odriozola will get a lot of blame. I think on that sequence, I think you add that Asensio sequence to the bank of plays. He just switches off defensively. Like, he's just at the top of the box. Odriozola is clearly marking like 3 guys. And Asensio just points to Odriozola behind him, and he's like, hey, guard that guy. And Odriozola's like, what? And he's like kind of flipping back and forth between 2-3 guys. And Asensio just, well, that's not my problem. I feel like Asensio got a pass on social media anyway, and I feel like he should have been called out a little bit on that play.
So I agree with you. I think the reason for that is in real time. It was too fast. It was like it was Odriozola was the guy in that zone and the obvious player to blame. And I do think there's what Matt said about like Odriozola, the way he was shaping up his hips. My issue with Odriozola is he didn't know, who was there on the far side. But when you think about it from like a structural perspective, and when I went back to look at it, he positioning wise he was fine. Maybe body shape wise he wasn't, but he needed to be pinched in that much because there were 3 players in that zone and Varane was the only one there. So they actually had a numerical advantage. Like, Odriozola had to come inwards, and it's only something I noticed on replay, which is why there's no tweet about it. But you're absolutely correct. Asensio just points him off, right? And Odriozola doesn't even see him as well. Asensio just points him off to say, hey, go to the far side. And it might be a bit of a stretch for Asensio to get there, but Asensio needs to recognize there. It's a 3 versus 2. I need to bust ass to get over to the other side because, like, there's no way Odriozola can move over, or at least in the moment before the pass, move over to the wide area like Asensio is asking him to, because he has to stay inward, right? Like, just basic principles of defending, say that Odriozola has to take the player closer to the ball. So that's I think you're spot on with that, Kiyan, in that I think Asensio probably should have taken more flack for that there, and he has some responsibility for that goal conceded, not least because he recognizes the danger and points Odriozola off instead of going there himself. But I do think Matt had a point with like a lack of awareness that someone was even there, right? So, it's as usual, things are more complicated as when they first seem, but I think like Asensio getting off of it was kind of lucky for him.
Yeah, you guys are right. And I think the other person who you could maybe discuss as well is Modric, because it was Levante center mid Marcelo, or I think that's his name. He was the one that actually drifted into the box and caused that overload in that central spot. And so you could maybe say that Modric maybe should have dropped in, but in reality, it would have been easier just for Asensio to drop in and cover that weak side post. I just personally just got it's so frustrating to see, because yes, it wasn't Odriozola's responsibility, but he should be aware of where Morales is, and he had no idea. And that ball, when you watch it go over his head, it makes you cringe, because it's so easily preventable. If he had just turned, his back was to Morales. If he had just opened his hips, see both the man and the ball, like he could, you could argue maybe he would have even had enough time to get over to Morales. But I mean, I do agree with you, and everyone in my mentions was saying Asensio's fault. So I do see that, but it's kind of those defensive fundamentals that I always say Lucas Vazquez lacks. I mean, Odriozola is honestly no better from the small sample size I've seen. I mean, he today, especially in 1v1 defending situations, he really, really struggled. And he has, I know we'll get to it, he had part of the blame in the second goal as well.